Hold the line.
One last battle to hold the line against the night.
The line must be drawn here. This far, no farther.
Hold the line. No one gets through, no matter what.
Sir, what are your orders?
There's only one order, Lieutenant. We hold.
You just hold the line, my fine young soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines. You just hold the line until our country gets back to understanding and respecting each other.
Incoming transmission.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
On MoJo5.0 Radio. The millennial conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Oh, yes indeed, ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, children of all ages, the new millennial conservative resistance does indeed begin right here, right now with you. You are listening to and hopefully watching the HoloNet on the mighty MoJo5.0. Today is Saturday, the 30th of March in the year of our Lord 2019, and we have quite a bit to get through this week because it seems like the world's basically going to hell in a handbasket. In between what is, erupting into an outright grassroots revolt in France, the sputtering failure of Brexit, which is now likely, according to the EU Commission, to lead to a crash out of the European Union on April 12th. Combine that with a mounting scandal in the Canadian Parliament. If we weren't all so wrapped up in all of this Russia drama, we might actually notice that the world's going to hell all around our country and that our allies are in some deep, deep trouble, starting with those here in North America, Canada, and Mexico. Justin Trudeau is really on the last legs of his premiership. 4 minutes ago on Fox News, Justin Trudeau was just hit with a secret recording of an aide pressing for an end of the corruption case against a Canadian company. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's efforts to quell calls for his resignation took another blow after his former Attorney General released a secretly recorded phone conversation related to a corruption scandal involving the engineering company SNC-Lavalin. In a recording released Friday, according to Fox News, Michael Wernick, an aide to Trudeau, told then Justice Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould that the Prime Minister, fearing the loss of Canadian jobs, quote, is determined, quite firm, end quote, to avoid prosecution of the powerful Canadian engineering company in a case involving allegations of bribery and corruption in Libya. So, this scandal is rocking Canadian politics right now. And I'll bet probably about $5 that nobody listening to the sound of my voice right now even knew about this. Why? Because we have become so myopically blinded to everything that is happening outside of the internal struggle within the United States that the world is changing all around us. Just last week, the new president of Mexico, a name that I've mentioned before, Manuel Lopez Obrador, actually asked Spain and the Vatican for reparations for the Mexican conquest. Wrap your mind around that for 2 minutes. He is actually asking for reparations to Mexico from Spain for the original colonization of Spain. If that's enough to give you agita, like it was me, check out Atrantil. Atrantil. It's on lovemytummy.com/mojo. It's the world's first ever proven solution to counter bloating in 2 published clinical trials. It was developed by a board-certified gastroenterologist, Dr. Ken Brown, safe for daily use, and has 100% natural polyphenols designed to address bloating problems where they begin and not just treat the system. It's not a probiotic, it's not an antibiotic, it's a blend of polyphenols. It's desired by your body to work as a gut regulator to end methane and then function as a postbiotic to benefit your overall health. It's the world's only digestive choice that contains quebracho colorado. And for you athletes, it's the world's only bloating remedy that is NSF certified for sports. So if you ever bloat after eating, ever get abdominal distension or tightness, feel tired or heavy after eating a meal, Lord knows I do, have unpredictable bathroom habits with constipation and even sporadic diarrhea, symptoms that look like IBS, you may have just read the stories I did, but you should definitely check out Atrantil. That's on lovemytummy.com/mojo, lovemytummy.com/mojo. Thank you for that. So, let's get back into that story. Now, we were talking about how the countries surrounding us, how our very allies, are having a hell of a time right now, and President Manuel Lopez Obrador of Mexico, who very recently met with President Trump, and they seem to get on pretty well, has now requested reparations from the Vatican and from Spain. As you can guess, that was not met very well. I had to hop online and tweet as soon as I saw this, saying, in other news, Greece demands Turkish reparations for the conquest of Constantinople, demands that the Turks withdraw from the occupation of the city, which seems reasonable. That is sarcasm, just so you know. So Mexican's president sent a letter to Spain's King Felipe VI and Pope Francis, urging them to apologize for human rights abuses committed during the conquest in the region 500 years ago. Spain rejected his call and called for a constructive perspective instead. I don't see if there was any comments here from the Vatican. Here we go. The Mexican leader's relations with Spain's center-left ruling party have been friendly, but the government in Madrid promptly rejected his request for an apology. The arrival 500 years ago of Spaniards to present Mexican territory cannot be judged in the light of contemporary considerations, the government said in a statement. Our two brother nations have always known how to read our shared past without anger and a constructive perspective. There was no immediate comment from the Vatican, but 3 years ago on a visit to Mexico, Pope Francis asked the indigenous people for forgiveness over the way they had been excluded from society. He said, "Some have considered your values, culture, and traditions to be inferior to ours. Others, intoxicated by power, money, and market trends, have stolen your lands or contaminated them. How sad this is. How worthwhile it would be for each of us to examine our conscience and learn to say, 'Forgive me.'" So, while the Catholic Church has its bad parts of history, I don't recall human sacrifices involving cutting anybody's heart out. I'm just putting that out there. That's just me. Your mileage may vary. But we've touched on Canada. We've touched on Mexico. Just a rehash. In Canada, it looks like extreme liberal Justin Trudeau could be days away from losing his premiership. This could signal the new rise of a conservative party in Canada. We need to stay tuned. We need to keep a careful watch on that for our brothers and sisters to the north, because I think that the pendulum could be starting to swing in the other direction as the corruption in the Trudeau administration is exposed day after day after day. I know it's a little weird perhaps to give an ear to Canadian politics, but it definitely matters to us. Mexican politics in much the same way. This new president, this President Obrador, is not a person who is friendly to conservative values. He's far more of a socialist, of a progressive-driven president. And I have a story here from The Hill. He said it's not up to us to stop illegal immigration to the U.S. Mexican President Andre Manuel, I forgot his first name's Andre Manuel Lopez Obrador on Tuesday fired back at President Trump, who had threatened to close the southern border earlier and said Mexico is not doing anything to curb illegal immigration. We respect President Trump's position, and we are going to help. That is, this is a problem of the United States, or it's a problem of the Central American country. It's not up to us Mexicans, no, he told Reuters. I just emphasize that migration flows of Mexicans to the United States are very low, a lot lower, he added. The Mexican is no longer seeking work in the United States. The majority are inhabitants of our fellow Central American countries. Trump in November and again in December threatened to close the border and returned to the issue in an early morning tweet on Thursday. President Trump tweeted, Mexico is doing nothing to help stop the flow of illegal immigrants to our country. They are all talk and no action. Likewise, Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador have taken our money for years and they do nothing. Dems don't care. Such bad laws may close southern border. So that's a question for you. Do you want the southern border closed? Yes. Please, 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 please close the border. Please. Story from our local rag here, the Arizona Republic, or as I affectionately refer to it as the Arizona Repugnant, tells us that even Democrat Sheriff Paul Penzone has been forced to admit that we will very likely see an uptick in crime given the fact that illegal immigrants are now being turned loose in Arizona. Yeah, that's a thing that happened. That's happening in Yuma right now as we speak. And even Democrat Paul Penzone, who defeated incumbent Sheriff Joe Arpaio in 2016, now even he has to admit that this is going to be a serious, serious problem. Border officials in Yuma, Arizona, here, again, not too far from me, about an hour west, have confirmed that over 17,000 illegal immigrants this year have been captured and detained, and they are now having to catch and release because their resources have been completely stripped. They are out of room to house these people. They are being caught and released pending trial, which is exactly what the Trump administration didn't want. And now there's talk of the supposed mother of all caravans building up in Guatemala, El Salvador, and about to enter Mexico. The AP wasn't able to confirm this in the stories that I read, but Pueblo Sin Fronteras is crowing about it so loud, claiming that it's a conspiracy and fake news from Kristen Nielsen, that there's probably got to be some truth to it. When Pueblo Sin Fronteras tells us, don't look over here, don't look, you probably want to look harder. Pueblo Sin Fronteras, if you don't remember, yet another Soros-driven concern with connections to the Open Society? I always forget the name of that. But again, going to have a fun story. I have to do at least one fun story today. Sorry, as I kind of decide what to roll to next. We do have one fun story. I think I'm going to go ahead and pepper that in now. Go to Maxim.com. I know. Gotta look around, make sure you're not going to get in trouble. But Maxim.com, article probably not safe for work. Scientists say people will definitely have sex in self-driving cars, Steve Huff writes. Imagine hitting the road in 2025 for a trip to see grandma, and along the way an autonomous vehicle passes with a couple inside going at it in the driver's seat. People who try that today will likely die in a fire and crash before they reach that magical moment. 8 to 10 years from now, it might not be an issue, scientists say, because the car or truck carrying the happy couple will keep humming along to safely to its destination. After all, self-driving vehicles are, to use the cliche, the wave of the future. Here, from the Annals of Tourism Research, are some conclusions reached by researchers from the University of Surrey and the University of Oxford in the UK. Tourism in the urban night is intricately connected to the hospitality industry. At the same time, violent crime and antisocial behavior often take place in areas of busy nightlife. Thus, the intersection of automated mobility and the urban night demands systematic and place-specific analyses. This might include questions of how prostitution and sex more generally in moving, connected, and autonomous vehicles becomes a growing phenomenon. For instance, hotels by the hour are likely to be replaced by connected and autonomous vehicles, and this will have implications for urban tourism, as sex plays a central role in many tourism experiences. So one of the big concerns apparently with self-driving cars is that hourly hotels, motels, are probably going to lose some business. That is an angle I would not have considered. Whew. So, somebody come up with a hashtag for that. I'm at a loss. But somebody hashtag that up. So, in recent news, here in, again, my native Arizona, some University of Arizona students are set to be charged now after interfering with the Border Patrol. And apologies are being sought. Go to the Arizona Daily Independent. Border Patrol agents want a public apology from Robert C. Robbins, president of the University of Arizona, after he sent a letter to the campus community on Friday admitting that students who had harassed and stalked agents were going to be charged by police. The students had targeted the Border Patrol agents who had been invited to attend a session of a career fair March 20th at the university. The two students will be charged with interference with peaceful conduct of an educational institution, and Robbins advised the community that the university's police department will continue to investigate this incident for additional criminal violations. The University of Arizona has not identified the students who will be facing charges. However, Denise Moreno-Melchor, a University of Arizona student, live-streamed her hysterical reaction to the presence of two Border Patrol agents. The ADI reported on March 22nd that Moreno-Melchor called the agents members of the, quote, murder patrol while filming. Quote, they allow murderers to be on campus where I pay to be here. Murderers on campus. Murderers on campus. When a member of the criminal justice group attempted to defuse the situation and invite Moreno-Melchor in, she responded, great. I can sit in the entire time. I'll just be saying that they're murderers the entire effing time because it's the truth. They are murderers, and you as a club should be more conscious of the rest of the students on this campus. This week, Judicial Watch, a conservative government watchdog group, filed a complaint with the university. They demanded that Robbins do his job by enforcing the student code of conduct. Judicial Watch called alarming the Arizona State University administration's support of those who engaged in criminal conduct. So I'm very glad that these students are going to be held responsible. But rather large but here. The lengths that the community had to go to in order to get U of A to actually do something, that's a bit disconcerting. Now, you have to realize Tucson is probably one of the most liberal towns here in Arizona. So it doesn't really shock me that the college wouldn't want to make waves like this. But at some point, you have to step up and do the right thing. Speaking of doing the right thing, do you know where the money from your cell phone goes? Seriously, when you pay your bill every month, do you have any idea what happens to that? Major corporations where you shop every day use their buying power to steer America towards a socialist economy. If your cell is with AT&T or Verizon, your money is supporting liberal candidates, the ACLU, Unidos US, and Planned Parenthood. You can support your values by switching to Patriot Mobile. Patriot Mobile offers the same reliable nationwide coverage you already have, plus they take a portion of their proceeds and support conservative organizations like the Heritage Foundation, Susan B. Anthony List, and PragerU. Patriot Mobile has unlimited talk and text plans starting as low as $20 a month. It's easy to switch. Call 1-800-A-PATRIOT and mention DOC, or visit patriotmobile.com/doc, and they'll waive up to 2 activation fees for you so you can bring 2 devices over. Join thousands of Americans and switch to Patriot Mobile today. So on that note, if you're watching online, you can find us at facebook.com/HoloNet. We're also on the MoJo5.0 on iHeart, anywhere great podcasts are found, live here every single Saturday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And you can also find us on www.theholonet.com, as well as Twitter @theholonet, on the MeWes, on the Facebooks, on the YouTubes, and on the BitChutes. Just search out HoloNet, and we will be here for you wherever great content is located. We're going to take a quick break coming up here, and on the other side of it, we're going to jump across the pond. We're going to talk about Brexit news, the collapse of the Brexit negotiations, and the European Union's response, which is basically saying that there's inevitably going to be a crash out of the UK from the EU on April 12th. We're going to explore that a little more, and we're also going to reach back to last week and touch on the Ukrainian situation a little bit more. The presidential election there has reached cartoonish proportions. We're going to touch on that when we come back from this little break coming up. Before we go, I did want to touch on a story that's been developing on Twitter. And this has been posted by a Huffington Post contributor by the name of Yashar Ali. According to his Twitter profile, of the New York Magazine HuffPost contributor, he tweets, "Yesterday, I received a call from Daphne Linzer, who, according to her profile, she's managing editor politics for NBC News and MSNBC, who serves as managing editor for NBC, MSNBC Politics. Daphne's conduct during the call was highly inappropriate and unethical. So what was the purpose of her call? She called me to bully me on behalf of the DNC." He continued in several tweets. "Daphne, who oversees the political coverage for NBC and MSNBC, was calling to bully me into delaying the publication of an innocuous scoop, and at no point did she advocate for her network. It was only about the DNC. Here's how all this started. Yesterday morning, I received a tip from a trusted source. The source told me that the DNC would be announcing the dates of the first 2020 primary debates later that day. The source gave me the dates they would be announcing, June 26th and 27th. Okay, it's a fairly small story, right? Okay. At first, I thought it was just a fun tidbit I could tweet out, but after I called several presidential campaign staffers, I learned that all the Dem campaigns were desperate to learn what the dates were going to be. I decided to post the scoop as an item in my newsletter. This wasn't a huge scoop, but it was a decent one, so I quickly called the DNC to fact-check the tip as I was running out of time. The dates would be announced on MSNBC in the 4 p.m. hour. It's important to note that almost all of my communication with the DNC was off-record. So I won't share most of what they said, but what I can tell you is pretty run-of-the-mill stuff. I asked the DNC if my tip was accurate, and they asked if they could call me back in 10 minutes. A few minutes later, they called back and asked if I could delay posting my scoop. And now, as a reporter, I'm going, that's me there. So I won't share most of what was said. Okay, here we go. For another hour or so, they could go through their here we go. They asked if they could delay posting my scoop for another hour or so they could go through their important notification calls to the state parties. I told them I couldn't wait as the news would leak and leave me without a story. That's all I could say about the call. 2 minutes later, I received a call from Daphne. I've never spoken to Daphne by phone. A couple of years ago, she reached out to me to see if I wanted to have coffee and talk about working at NBC News, but I declined as I was actively investigating NBC matters and I thought it'd be strange if I discussed a job. So when I saw Daphne calling, I assumed she would ask me to consider delaying my post. At the end of the day, I'm going to kind of finish this on the other end of this break. So we'll be back. You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast on MoJo5.0.
On MoJo5.0 Radio, the millennial conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Oh, yes, that's right. We are back. You're listening to the millennial conservative resistance, which begins right here, right now with you on the HoloNet on MoJo5.0. And I did a thing. I did the radio thing that you're not supposed to do. The thing. I ran up the post before the other side of the break. But I wanted to get back to that Twitter string. I just want to get this out there before this guy gets thrown off Twitter. Yashar Ali continued saying, I'd never spoken to Daphne by phone. A couple of years ago, she reached out to me to see if I wanted to have coffee and talk about working at NBC News, but I declined as I was actively investigating NBC matters and thought it would be strange to discuss a job. So when I saw Daphne calling, I assumed she would ask me to consider delaying my post so that MSNBC could announce it first. Given this was an innocuous scoop and not some investigative story, I wouldn't have lost sleep if I had delayed, but that's not why she was calling. After exchanging pleasantries, Daphne told me that she'd received a call from the DNC and was told that I had a story. Now, it's not strange that the DNC called her. They were coordinating the announcement. What was strange was that she was calling me and taking a menacing tone. She asked if I could hold the story, and I said I couldn't. She was agitated. Why not? I said, I'm not going to lose a scoop. Then she got angrier and said, why not? It's not a big deal. Let them make a few phone calls. My jaw dropped. I realized that Daphne Linzer, the head of all political coverage for NBC News and MSNBC, wasn't calling to advocate for her network. She was calling to advocate for the DNC's position. She wanted me to wait so they could call their state party leaders. I thought to myself, this is how people think it works. It's not, but Daphne was doing it. She kept pressing me. Now, I acknowledged, for stuff that isn't about serious investigative reporting, there's no problem holding something, but I knew once others got the call, I would lose the scoop. Daphne reminded me that she was a national security reporter at WAPO for 10 years, and they would hold stuff all the time. Note, so people wouldn't get killed. Quote, why can't you just wait, let them make their calls, and then you'll be the first put to print? I couldn't believe what she was saying. Again, it was fine for me to print the story an hour later, beat her own network by only 3 hours, but she wanted me to let the DNC inform state party leaders. Why the hell did she care? I kept telling Daphne no, that I wasn't waiting, and she kept getting more frustrated. She was exasperated. She didn't understand why I couldn't wait for the DNC to make their state notification calls. I was so surprised that she was talking to me this way to a total stranger. The head of the political division was trying to bully me at the behest of the DNC over a dumb scoop, even though they may not have even asked her to. 2/3 of the way through the conversation, Daphne started a sentence with, "This is off the record." She hadn't said it at the beginning of our conversation, and most important, at no point did I agree when she said off the record to keep it off record. I'm not one of those gotcha reporters. I think it's bad for sourcing relationships to make people like they constantly feel like they have to say off record, but Daphne isn't a source. She was calling to intimidate me, so she doesn't get those benefits. She said off the record one more time later in the call, and again, I just let her keep talking. I did not agree with anything. Then I told her I had to go talk to my editor, and she got even more frustrated and said, no, I want to talk to you about this. I said, no, I want to go talk to my editor. Then she sent me over the edge and said, what's your editor's name? I want to talk to them. She was trying to intimidate me on behalf of the DNC. I ended the call. After the call with Daphne, I published the stupid scoop. Then I did a gut check, and over the next 2 hours, I called 10 experienced, prominent reporters and told them the story. They were stunned by what Daphne did and encouraged me to share it publicly. I'm not naive to the fact that this incident is going to be twisted by some with an agenda to discredit the media. and say they collude with political parties. Editorializing. Apparently they do! But I think it's more important to expose the bad behavior than keep it under wraps. What Daphne did was unethical. Yes, it was. It was absolutely unethical what she did. There are plenty of times reporters will introduce people in politics to other reporters or TV people. I've done it many times. That is advocating for more coverage, not less. Daphne was advocating for me to not do something on behalf of a political party. What I can't figure out is, and no one else I spoke to could understand, why open yourself up to this for a stupid story? How was this worth it? So that is like a 26 tweet long string from Yashar Ali. And that's a hell of a story. When a political editor at MSNBC asks you to not even can a story, just to sit on it. Sit on it for an hour so her political friends can make a few phone calls. That's a huge ethical issue. When we're not talking about sitting on a story to save lives, which again, from a journalistic standard, I understand. Don't get me wrong. I don't put myself out there to claim to be a journalist these days anymore. I might have started out, with that in mind, but I realized I can't keep my opinion out of things. So I tend to editorialize a great deal more. So I've started to refer to myself as I've referred to myself as a columnist. I've referred to myself as a contributor. What am I listing right now? I actually got to go check my own damn Twitter just to see what I put up there. Commentator. I think that's fair because I don't go out and get the stories. I don't have sources. I don't do scoops. Very, very seldom have I done a hard news story. And this is even going back to when I was a contributor at the other company. Most of my stuff is opinion-based and is editorial and presented that way. But when you're talking about hard journalism, and somebody asks you to sit on a story to save lives, like for a national security concern, that's one thing. And it's a battle of journalistic ethics to decide whether or not you feel it is appropriate to do so. And I respect that. But nonetheless, we have to recognize that there's a severe ethical dilemma in play when somebody of this position, of this level, is exerting all of their clout, all of their authority of their position, just to do a political favor. That is just staggering. So, moving right along to other things. Cat coolers. Cat coolers give you a cooler so rugged it changes everything. It's rugged, it keeps ice cold for up to 7 days. It's made here in the USA. It's customizable, 4 different colors: white, black, yellow, and camouflage for you hunters out there. Anything else you want to say, I have to say, I live in Arizona. Coolers are important. I go camping a lot. And something that can keep everything cool for an extended period of time is huge. This keeps ice cold for 7 days. That's massively cool. Spring and summer are right around the corner. Picnicking, boating, outdoor season. A cat cooler can be your new best friend. Keep your food, drink fresher, colder, longer. There are several codes we have for cat coolers. You can use code Steven. Code gets a 10% discount. That's Stephen Airy from Defenders, good buddy of mine. And there are a couple of tips here to increase the ice retention in your cat cooler. Reduce the surface area of the ice. Use a block or large cubes to reduce surface area. Pre-chill the cooler. Minimize the amount of open space in a cooler. Pack it tight. Pre-freeze your water bottles and meats, things that will thaw quickly. Place the cooler in the shade and keep the cooler closed, of course. But this thing is tested to keep ice cold for up to 7 days. You can customize it. You can put pictures on the top of it. If you want to put a lovely MoJo5.0 logo on there, you can slap it on there. Make sure you check it out. That's at www.catcoolers.com. And like I said, use the promo code Steven. That'll give some love over to my buddy Steven Airy on Defenders Live. So moving things right along. Now, before the break, I said we were going to talk a little bit about the Brexit. According to Sky News, a letter urges Prime Minister Theresa May to back no deal as she now ponders a fourth vote. A fourth vote on her Brexit deal. A letter sent by Tory MPs to Theresa May urged her to pursue a no-deal Brexit, was organized by a minister, according to Sky sources. It's ramping up the pressure to the embattled Prime Minister as she considers a last-ditch attempt to save her Brexit deal after suffering a third straight defeat in the House of Commons. One of the MPs who signed the letter said it was 2 paragraphs long, and it called her not to move forward toward adopting a customs union. Conservative source said the letter reaffirmed our commitment to the manifesto and to the PM's own determination to seek a short extension to Article 50 that avoids the EU elections. Ms. May is weighing up on her next steps after her deal was voted down by 286 votes to 344. She said the implications of the vote were grave, adding, "I fear we are reaching the limits of this process in the House." The Prime Minister has been urged by some in her own cabinet now to embrace a no-deal Brexit, which, inserting my editorial opinion here, a no-deal Brexit, whatever that economic cost may be, is simply the best option. Rip the Band-Aid off. There are a lot of great videos out there I can refer you to online from Sargon of Akkad, some from Count Dankula, Mark Meekum. They are now members of UKIP and the UK Independence Party. There's great work out there by Nigel Farage if you want to check that out. And they all outline very beautifully why a no-deal Brexit is the ideal scenario for Britain to get out and get out fast. And a lot of that has to do with Article 13, which has just been passed by the European Union and will be implemented over the course of the next 2 years. It is basically going to make the internet as we know it impossible to use in Europe. So there's going to be basically 3 versions of the internet now. Right now there's 2. There's the internet in most of the world, and there's the internet in China behind the Great Firewall of China, subject to all the Chinese government's censorships and other privations. But the EU is going to have to be in its own walled garden of the internet, so to speak, because you're not going to be able to use copywritten material under what is currently known as fair use, which is transforming the content in a way that changes it completely, being critical of the content, doing a review of the content, basically most of YouTube. Now you add in something that's called a link tax, and that's going to change the way we all get news. It's basically going to destroy the alternative news media. So smaller outlets, like the HoloNet maybe, smaller outlets will not be able to work in Europe because you'll have to pay a link fee, a link tax, which then goes to every single major provider. So when I link to stories, and I always have my links in the description, I link to stories from the BBC, I link to stories from Sky News, I link to stories from Fox News, etc., so on and so forth. If those rules were in place here in the United States, I would have to pay for each link. That puts me out of the game, folks. That puts most of our smaller media members, our commentators, our reporters, our journalists, people who curate their own news websites, that puts them completely out of the game. That destroys the internet and internet media as we understand it. And it gives a huge benefit to these great big media outlets and lets them continue to control the flow of information. And at the end of the day, I think Carl Benjamin, Sargon of Akkad, hit the nail straight on the head when he said the end goal of this is for the EU to be able to control the message that's getting to the public through the mainstream media, who they already have under the thumb, by crushing the alternative media sources. That is the true goal and the true aim behind Articles 11 and 13. And I think he's hitting on something really solid there. I think he's got a fantastic point, because this is how you exert control over a media that has been incredibly critical of you. Resistance to the European Union and pro-Brexiteers live online. It's much the same situation as there was here in the US and still is with supporters of President Trump. The internet is our domain. And now in the EU, they're trying to take it away from us. And we cannot allow similar legislation to even be brought to the floor here in the United States. And with AOC already queuing up to make a tax upon our Second Amendment by circumventing the legislature completely, according to the Blaze, and going directly to lenders, and the big internet companies, the big content companies like Google and YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, seeking to muzzle conservatives around the world. We're in trouble, kids. We're in trouble. So, with no further ado, the EU Commission, as I said, is currently viewing a no-deal Brexit by April 12th as being likely. Reuters tells us European Commission on Friday said no-deal Brexit in April 12th is now likely after the UK Parliament rejected for the third time British Prime Minister Theresa May's divorce plan with the EU. The Commission regrets the negative vote in the House of Commons today, it said in a statement. It will be for the UK to indicate the way forward before that date, referring to the 12th. A no-deal scenario on 12 April is now the likely scenario. The EU is now fully prepared to deal with a no-deal scenario at midnight on April 12th. The Commission said the divorce terms without the failed withdrawal agreement would be much worse. The benefits of the withdrawal agreement, including a transition period, will in no circumstances be replicated in a no-deal scenario. Sectoral mini-deals are not an option. And you see, this is a little bit more of the pressure and the fear-mongering that's getting thrown onto Britain at this point, when they don't realize their strongest bargaining position is from the place of no deal, because no deal hurts the EU just as bad as it hurts the UK, if not worse. I hope, I pray, Theresa May sticks to her guns and that a no-deal Brexit goes forward. It'll hurt at first, but I think it's the only way to ensure that Britain fully exits the EU and gets back a modicum of their freedom. Because right now, free speech, as we've discussed in previous shows, if you want to go back and look at the HoloNet catalog online, freedom of speech in the UK is almost dead. Almost completely dead. When you have people being arrested for misgendering somebody on Twitter, that tells you something. When a man gets arrested, charged, and convicted for teaching his girlfriend's dog to do a Nazi salute when shown Nazi imagery and stimuli as a joke because he's a comedian and a crap poster, that tells you there's a problem. And I look at Britain in this way, and I see a window into like 10 years down the road of the progressive policies that the DNC and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Cory Booker and they're like are trying to deploy. So you want to know what a future looks like under the Democratic Party, under the progressives? Look across the pond. We say it can't happen here. 20 years ago, back in the 1980s under Margaret Thatcher, Britain was a much freer country. Before the EU, before Labour took over for over a decade. That's the price of allowing progressive socialism to foment and to pick up steam. We can't allow it. We have to do everything we can to convince people that the way forward is the Constitution. And we have to stick to our principles. So I promised we would go back to talking about Ukraine. Got to do that now. Story from the Washington Post. Kiev. Everything is bad. Ukraine on edge in election with untested comedian as the front runner. A country at war with Russian-backed separatists appears ready to move a comedian and a political novice one step closer to becoming the possible commander-in-chief. A little bit of this going around, huh? You know, we got a business tycoon, real estate baron, and reality show star for president, so why not? Volodymyr Zelensky, a 41-year-old entertainer who plays a president on TV. Whew, you can't write this stuff. Leads in the polls ahead of the first round of Ukraine's presidential election Sunday. Behind him, polls show, are two erstwhile favorites with long political resumes, the incumbent Petro Poroshenko and former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko. They're expected to be in a down-to-the-wire battle for second place to face Zelensky in the April 21st runoff. The country's scrambled political landscape on the eve of the election reflects Ukraine's rocky road since mass protests toppled a Moscow-friendly president 5 years ago. All three leading candidates say they want to continue deepening Ukraine's ties to Western institutions such as the European Union, but domestic discontent over a weak economy, war, and corruption in the entrenched political class has spurred many voters to spurn Poroshenko and Tymoshenko. We have a choice between stable but bad or a future where things could be better, said Elena Velikaya, a 19-year-old student in Kiev, Ukraine's capital. Everything is bad right now. With Zelensky, maybe it'll be better. We know Poroshenko. We know Tymoshenko. Zelensky does not openly embrace the type of nativist rhetoric that has catapulted to office other entertainers turned politicians, such as President Trump and Italy's Deputy Prime Minister and Interior Minister, Matteo Salvini. But Zelensky does represent wider political trends in recent years that have elevated outsiders over establishment candidates. Poroshenko has tried to use the war against Russian-backed separatists in the east and Russia's annexation of the Ukrainian peninsula of Crimea to whip up voter support in his favor. He has touted his support of a Ukrainian Orthodox Church independent of Moscow, his investment in the military, and his promotion of the Ukrainian language over Russian, which is widely spoken in Ukraine. Either Poroshenko or Putin, a campaign slogan unveiled by the Ukrainian president in January read, but many of the voters aren't buying it. Offering few specifics, Zelensky has promised to sit down with Russian President Vladimir Putin and negotiate an end to the 5-year war, which the United Nations say has claimed 13,000 lives. Zelensky, a native Russian speaker who hails from Ukraine's southeast, has called for a campaign to win back the hearts and minds of people living in a separatist-occupied territory. So I'm not going to read you the whole story. There's quite a bit more to go through here. But not knowing Zelensky's politics in totality, what I can say is that it's very promising to see the Ukrainian voters turn away from a system they know is broken and they know has hurt them year over year over year. And I really wish and I really hope that we will see the same here in the United States, where there's either a rebirth of the Republican Party away from the establishment of the party. You know, President Trump does not represent the establishment in any way, shape, or form, I don't believe. But I think we need to get away from the old guard establishment Republican Party. We need to get away from the Democratic Party, who has become the leftist progressive socialist party. We need to find a way back to the middle ground, because today the new middle isn't the middle. Today, the new middle is you're mostly a Democrat, at least in their eyes. Everything has shifted left. So where a Democrat in the 1980s would today be viewed as a Republican. A moderate one, albeit, but still. We need to shift things back. We need to reverse the slide of the Overton window back to something that is reasonable, back to a middle ground where compromise is possible. You know, speaking of getting things back to a nice normal, you should check out the Doc Thompson Health Challenge. The Doc Thompson Health Challenge was created by Brad Staggs, created to help Brad Staggs improve his health. Created a challenge that Doc Thompson would be proud of and would support, because Doc was big into health. The challenge brings the MoJo5.0 community together for a common cause to heal, survive, and thrive, and it's a 90-day challenge to make healthier lifestyle choices. The challenge started on March 4th of 19. I'm a little late to the bus because I only just came on board, but it's hosted by Gwen Rich, health advocate and founder of The Rich Solution, www.therichsolution.com. And they talk about tackling the 8 obstacles that everyone needs to conquer for optimal health: diet, attitude, exercise, sleep, stress, environmental toxins, community, and emotional health. Again, that's therichsolution.com, the Doc Thompson Health Challenge. Check it out. That's therichsolution.com. So kind of closing thoughts for this week. As I said during the inaugural show, we need to keep our eyes open. We need to keep paying attention to the outside world. I know I didn't have a lot of overlays this week, and if you're watching the video, you're mostly just staring at me talking to a camera. But links will all be in the description. This week, I had to do things a little bit differently because of my working situation with my family. So I didn't have access to my full office. You can't see with the green screen behind me, but not where I normally record. Just like we have to be cognizant to the needs of our families, we have to be cognizant not just of what's going on in our immediate sphere here in the U.S. We have to be cognizant of what's happening around the world. We have to be understanding of what's going on in Canada, in Mexico, in the UK, in the EU, in China. We have to keep our eyes open to everything else that is moving. Otherwise, we could be surprised and taken advantage of. So the defenders say arm yourselves. Here at the HoloNet, we say hold the line against the night. I'm going to add another one to it. Keep your eyes open, folks. Keep your eyes open and your ears open. Should Britain crash out hard from Brexit, they're going to need our support. As the family of nations, the special relationship, our cousins over the pond. The EU is going to go down. It's a matter of time. In France, the Yellow Jacket movement has been picking up. I'm sorry, I don't think we got too far into that story this week. I'll try to focus on it a little more next week. But the situation in Paris has been deteriorating and getting worse. That's something we need to stay tuned to as well. There's so much going on in the world. So much that all of our distractions and all of our trappings have been leading us away from. So this week, what I would urge you to do is focus on what's important. Focus on your family. Focus on your work. Focus on your soul, on your spirit. And then look outward. And don't just look at whatever Facebook is showing you for news. Or whatever's trending on Twitter. Or whatever the mainstream media thinks you need to look at. Explore. Go beyond. And keep apprised of everything that's moving. And that's what we're going to try to help you do here on the HoloNet. On that note, I want to thank you for watching and listening. Say God bless you. And God bless the United States of America. From Phoenix, I'm Matt Holloway. End transmission. Good night, everybody.